had never felt the air so thick with judgment. The room was silent, but the weight of every gaze pressed down on me like a physical force. My father-in-law, the man whose approval I had spent years craving, leaned back in his chair and said the words that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my life. "You're fired." Time seemed to freeze. My heart slammed against my chest, each beat echoing the humiliation that spread through me like wildfire. Colleagues shifted uncomfortably, and my spouse's eyes darted between us, a mixture of shock and uncertainty. I could feel my face burning, my pride dissolving in real time. Questions I didn't dare voice churned in my mind. Why? How? What did I do wrong? The betrayal cut deeper than any personal insult could. I had given my all, sacrificed comfort, and trusted this family with my loyalty. And yet in that room, I was stripped bare, exposed, and discarded. The sting of disbelief mixed with a rising tide of anger I didn't yet know how to channel. As I gathered my scattered thoughts, I realized that nothing would ever be the same. This wasn't just about losing a job. It was a declaration that my worth, my contributions, and my dreams were irrelevant in their eyes. And yet, amidst the shame, a tiny ember flickered inside me, a spark that would, in time, grow into something unstoppable. The moment I closed the door to my apartment, it felt like the walls were pressing in on me, echoing the emptiness I suddenly carried. The hum of the city outside was distant, almost indifferent, while inside the silence was deafening. I sank onto the edge of the couch, my mind replaying every second in that boardroom. The sneer in my father-in-law's tone, the way the room froze around his declaration. "You're fired." The words weren't just a sentence. They were an indictment of everything I had poured into this life. I thought back to the nights I stayed late, balancing spreadsheets while my spouse slept peacefully, thinking I was protecting our future. I remembered turning down opportunities, working weekends, and bending over backward to earn respect and trust. And now, all that effort seemed meaningless, vanished with a single cruel dismissal. My dreams, once vivid and bright, felt dulled, almost taunting me from a distance. Loneliness crept in, settling like a shadow across my chest. I felt disconnected from the life I thought I had built. Every memory of sacrifices, every moment I had chosen family over myself, now carried the bitter taste of rejection. I stared at the walls, trying to gather a sense of direction. But all I could feel was disbelief, disappointment, and a gnawing fear that I had lost not just a job, but my place in a world I had trusted completely. Yet somewhere beneath the despair, buried deep under shame and doubt, a faint pulse of determination began to stir. I didn't see it clearly yet, but it was the first whisper of the fight that would eventually define me. The first month after being fired felt like a slow-motion unraveling of my life. Bills stacked up on the kitchen counter, each envelope a reminder of obligations I could no longer meet. Credit card statements glared back at me, and every email from a bank made my stomach twist. My savings, once a small comfort, started dwindling faster than I could manage. Even investments I had carefully nurtured seemed to falter, and I watched the numbers sink with a helplessness that gnawed at my confidence. Friends and distant relatives who had once admired my ambition began asking awkward questions, their pitying glances and hesitant advice only deepening my sense of failure. "Are you sure you're cut out for this?" one friend asked, trying to sound concerned. I nodded, but inside a storm of doubt raged. Meanwhile, my father-in-law continued his life in the penthouse tower I had once hoped to step into. Parties, accolades, new business deals. He moved with the effortless confidence of someone untouchable, indifferent to the chaos he had helped create in my world. I felt small, invisible, powerless, as though my entire identity had been stripped away in that boardroom. At night, I lay awake replaying conversations, wondering where I went wrong, questioning every choice I had ever made. And yet, in the quiet moments, beneath the weight of disappointment and the sting of envy, I felt a subtle shift. A spark, barely noticeable at first, ignited inside me. The awareness that surrender was not an option. My pride, bruised though it was, refused to let me accept this as my permanent reality. If the world and my father-in-law wanted to underestimate me, fine, I would take that underestimation and use it. The humiliation, the financial strain, the doubts of everyone around me, they would all become fuel. In the darkness of that fall, a plan began forming in the back of my mind. Fragile, but insistent. And for the first time since being fired, I imagined a path forward, not just to survive, but to rise, to reclaim not only my confidence, but the respect and power that had been so cruelly denied. One sleepless night, I found myself scrolling through endless articles about emerging tech trends, trying to distract my mind from the gnawing anxiety. That's when it hit me. A sudden clarity that felt like lightning striking in the middle of a storm. What if I could create something that combined cutting-edge technology with the kind of luxury experience only the wealthiest could access? Something so exclusive, so meticulously designed, that it wouldn't just appeal to the elite. It would redefine status itself. My mind raced with possibilities. Sleek designs, smart integrations, bespoke customization, and the kind of craftsmanship that could turn heads even in rooms full of CEOs. I grabbed a notebook, the pages waiting for the ideas I had suppressed for months. I began sketching prototypes, jotting down materials, market strategies, even imagined logos. Each stroke of the pen, each diagram, carried the heat of the anger I still felt toward my father-in-law, the way he dismissed me, the way he flaunted his authority and wealth. That humiliation, which had once left me frozen, now became a driving force, a fire I could channel into something tangible. I stayed up until dawn, fueled by a mix of adrenaline and resolve, imagining a future where my work spoke louder than his disdain ever could. For the first time in weeks, the feeling of power returned. Not the hollow, borrowed kind that comes from status or connections, but something raw, personal, and unstoppable. In that quiet apartment, I transformed rejection into ambition, and for the first time, I tasted the thrill of a plan that could actually change everything. Taking the first steps toward my vision felt like walking into a storm with nothing but a sketchbook and a stubborn sense of purpose. I reached out to potential investors, only to be met with polite dismissals or outright laughter. "You were just fired," one said, smirking as if that single sentence defined my entire potential. Suppliers questioned my credibility, hesitant to risk materials or production for someone they deemed inexperienced and unstable. Every phone call ended with rejection. Every meeting felt like an uphill battle. I remember sitting in my apartment after one particularly humiliating conversation, staring at the ceiling and feeling the weight of doubt pressing down like lead. But as the initial frustration subsided, I realized something vital. Every no was a lesson, every dismissal a clue about how to navigate this world of elitism and skepticism. I started refining my pitch, tailoring my words to resonate not with pity or sympathy, but with the ambition and sophistication of the clients I wanted to reach. I learned to leverage small wins, securing a tiny supplier willing to take a chance, and a friend who believed in me enough to loan seed funding. Step by step, the walls of rejection began to feel less insurmountable, replaced by a sense of cunning strategy. Each obstacle was no longer a threat, but a challenge I could outmaneuver with patience, creativity, and relentless determination. I was beginning to see the contours of my first reversal. The world might have written me off, but I was quietly gathering the pieces to prove them wrong. And in the quiet of my apartment, amid sketches, spreadsheets, and rejection letters, I felt a flicker of triumph. It was fragile, yes, but it was mine. And it was only the beginning. With the first glimmers of progress, I knew I couldn't do this alone. I began assembling a small team, handpicking individuals who, like me, had been underestimated, dismissed, or overlooked. Each person brought unique talents, unconventional thinking, and a hunger that mirrored my own. Together, we turned my cramped apartment and rented office space into a hive of creativity, plotting the beginnings of a luxury tech brand that no one outside our circle believed could exist. We worked long nights, fueled by coffee and determination, debating designs, refining features, and testing prototypes with obsessive attention to detail. Slowly, the first products took shape. Sleek, elegant, and innovative, with a quiet confidence that seemed to whisper of the disruption we intended to cause. Our efforts began to attract attention in small, unexpected ways. A local tech blog featured an early prototype, a boutique investor asked for a meeting, and social media murmurs hinted at intrigue. Each tiny recognition felt like a ripple against the ocean of doubt that had once surrounded me. The contrast between my humble, cluttered workspace and the polished luxury of my father-in-law's corporate empire could not have been starker. While he floated through galas and penthouses, unconcerned, we scraped, designed, and persevered, turning scarcity into ingenuity. And with every sketch finalized, every prototype polished, a quiet satisfaction grew within me. A knowledge that we were building something more than a product. We were building a statement. A quiet rebellion against the world that had written us off. It was small, but it was undeniable. Our presence was beginning to register, and the first whispers of recognition marked the initial victories of a journey that would soon make him notice me in ways he never expected. It started with a single social media post, a sleek image of our flagship luxury tech device, shared by one of the boutique clients who had received an early prototype. Within hours, the post gained traction, shared by influencers, discussed in niche forums, and celebrated by tech enthusiasts who admired the elegance and innovation of what we had built. Suddenly, our small venture, once dismissed as a dream of someone just fired, became a topic of conversation among people who actually mattered. Invitations to exclusive tech events arrived. Investors who had previously shrugged at my emails were now asking for meetings, and friends who had doubted me were messaging congratulations, their tones shifting from skepticism to awe. For the first time, I felt the weight of validation. Not shallow praise, but acknowledgement that we had created something remarkable, something real. And then, as whispers of our success began circulating in the business world, I heard through mutual contacts that my father-in-law had taken notice. The man who had once publicly humiliated me was hearing my name associated with innovation, exclusivity, and status. I imagined him reclining in his office, perhaps scowling, perhaps surprised, realizing that the person he dismissed was now operating in a league he could no longer ignore. Confidence surged within me, electrifying every decision I made. The months of doubt, the nights of scraping together funds, the persistent rejections, they all culminated in this moment of undeniable reversal. The tide was turning, and for the first time, I truly believed that I wasn't just building a product or a company. I was reclaiming the power, respect, and influence that had been taken from me. And in that realization, a quiet, triumphant smile formed, knowing that the world, and especially him, would have to reckon with the success I had carved from humiliation. Just as momentum began to build, the first signs of backlash appeared. Whispers through industry contacts suggested my father-in-law had quietly alerted his network, painting me as inexperienced, reckless, and unworthy of trust. Suppliers hesitated, investors became cautious, and a few potential clients pulled out at the last minute. I could feel the invisible hands of his influence reaching into every corner of the business world I was trying to navigate. The sting of betrayal burned sharper than any financial setback. This wasn't just about market competition. It was about class, power, and the social hierarchy I had dared to challenge. I spent nights strategizing, analyzing every email, every hesitation, every doubt, searching for patterns in the sabotage. I learned to anticipate the moves of those influenced by him, to negotiate with precision, and to turn hesitation into leverage. Slowly, my careful countermeasures began to work. Hesitant suppliers were reassured, investors intrigued by our growing reputation reconsidered, and clients who had pulled back were drawn back in by tailored pitches and demonstrations of professionalism. Each obstacle became a test of wit, patience, and resilience, forcing me to sharpen my instincts and refine every strategy. The tension was palpable. One wrong move could crumble everything, but with each challenge I felt my confidence grow. The very people who tried to suppress my ascent unwittingly strengthened my resolve, and the thrill of navigating this storm reinforced the truth I had discovered. Setbacks could be transformed into advantage, and the world's underestimation of me was becoming its own undoing. After months of meticulous planning, sleepless nights, and calculated risks, the moment arrived to launch our first full-scale luxury tech line. The event was nothing short of extraordinary, a curated blend of elegance, innovation, and exclusivity, designed to capture the attention of the international market. Invitations went out to select media, high-net-worth clients, and industry insiders. Each element of the presentation carefully crafted to communicate sophistication and mastery. As I watched the prototypes displayed under perfect lighting, I felt a quiet surge of pride. This was the tangible result of relentless effort, ingenuity, and resilience. Coverage came quickly. Tech magazines highlighted our innovation, online forums buzzed with intrigue, and influencers praised the combination of functionality and artistry. Sales inquiries poured in from around the world, and suddenly, the scale of our influence began to rival the elite circles my father-in-law had always occupied with ease. I allowed myself a moment to imagine him hearing the news, realizing that the person he had dismissed was now commanding attention and respect on a global stage. And yet, amidst the triumph, I felt humility, not from lack of ambition, but from the memory of struggle, sacrifice, and the nights spent doubting whether any of this would ever materialize. I reflected on how far I had come, the journey that had begun with humiliation and despair, and the quiet determination that had fueled every decision along the way. Empathy for my own perseverance mingled with satisfaction, a reminder that victory was not only external but internal, grounded in the growth and resourcefulness I had nurtured. By the end of the event, I realized the tide had shifted entirely. My position, influence, and credibility had grown strong enough to stand shoulder to shoulder with the world I had once only observed from afar, and the anticipation of what came next was electric. The night of the gala arrived, the kind of event that felt like stepping into a world of glitz, power, and quiet intimidation. I walked through the grand entrance, feeling the subtle hum of anticipation in the air, the polished floors reflecting chandeliers that sparkled like distant stars. What made this night even more intoxicating was the secret I carried. I was not just a guest. I was the keynote speaker, the orchestrator of an empire that my father-in-law had dismissed without a second thought. He arrived in his tailored suit, confident as ever, mingling with elite guests, unaware that the world he had always navigated with ease now included me as an equal, if not a rival. The lights dimmed, and the murmurs quieted as I took the stage. The first slides projected the fruits of our labor: sleek devices, international partnerships, media accolades, and a growing client base of high-profile figures. Each image, each statistic drew gasps from the crowd, whispers of admiration and disbelief circulating like wildfire. And then I saw him, my father-in-law, frozen mid-conversation, his eyes widening as recognition dawned. For the first time, he was confronted with undeniable proof that the person he had publicly humiliated was now commanding attention, respect, and influence on a scale he had never anticipated. I spoke calmly, articulately, and with the confidence that comes only from surviving doubt, sabotage, and relentless determination. As the audience erupted into applause, the realization settled in. My empire had not only survived the obstacles but had flourished spectacularly. The satisfaction was profound. Here, in front of the very people who once upheld his authority, he could no longer dismiss me. His position, which had once overshadowed my existence, felt diminished, not through malice, but through the undeniable evidence of merit and achievement. I reveled in the balance of triumph and dignity, knowing that every sleepless night, every strategic maneuver, and every ounce of persistence had led to this moment. The humiliation that once defined me was now a memory eclipsed by accomplishment, a testament to resilience, intelligence, and unshakable determination. And in that climactic instant, I realized that vindication isn't just about proving someone wrong. It's about proving yourself right, and nothing could undo the truth of what I had built, the empire that now bore my vision, my sweat, and my name. Sitting alone in my office that night, the gala behind me and the city lights stretching endlessly outside the window, I finally allowed myself to reflect on the journey. The humiliation, the rejection, the long nights of doubt. They all seemed like necessary trials that had forged my resilience and sharpened my instincts. I thought about the moments I had almost given up, the calls unanswered, the doors slammed in my face, and realized that each setback had taught me something invaluable about strategy, patience, and creativity. It wasn't just about building a luxury tech empire. It was about discovering what I was capable of when the world told me I wasn't enough. Empathy for my former adversaries emerged naturally, not pity, but understanding of their limitations and fears, which had driven them to belittle and obstruct me. I also felt profound gratitude for the allies who had believed in me when most had doubted. My small but brilliant team, the investors who had seen potential, and even the early clients who had given our fledgling products a chance. Their faith, combined with my perseverance, had turned humiliation into a platform for achievement. The moral victory wasn't simply in the wealth, the accolades, or the recognition. It was in reclaiming my dignity, in proving that integrity, intelligence, and relentless effort could outlast arrogance and cruelty. And as I leaned back, allowing the satisfaction to settle into my bones, I understood that true victory was not about revenge for its own sake. It was about transforming pain into purpose and using it to elevate oneself while remaining grounded in the lessons learned along the way. The fire that had begun as anger and humiliation had matured into wisdom, confidence, and a quiet sense of triumph that no external force could diminish. Months later, as I watched my empire continue to thrive, I felt a sense of balance I had never known. The same hands that had trembled over bills and rejection now oversaw a business that demanded respect and admiration. Yet despite the success, I remained grounded, remembering the nights of doubt, the sleepless strategy sessions, and the sting of public humiliation that had fueled every decision. I understood that power and wealth were not the ultimate measure of victory. It was the clarity, confidence, and self-respect I had regained that truly mattered. Family dynamics remained complex. Subtle tensions lingered, and I knew that the journey with my father-in-law and others might not be fully over, but that no longer frightened me. I had reclaimed my voice, my dignity, and the right to define my own worth on my own terms. As I reflected, I felt a quiet pride, not the arrogance of triumph, but the calm certainty that comes from knowing I had faced betrayal, navigated every obstacle, and emerged stronger, smarter, and unshakably grounded. The story that had begun with humiliation now closed on a note of catharsis and inspiration. A reminder that resilience, ingenuity, and patience could transform even the deepest wounds into the foundation of success, leaving me not only victorious, but unbroken. Looking back, I often ask myself, what if I had given up the moment I was humiliated? Would I still be chasing someone else's approval, trapped in the shadows of their success? The truth is, every obstacle, every doubt, every no became a stepping stone to something greater. I hope my story reminds you that resilience and vision can turn even the harshest setbacks into opportunities for growth and empowerment. Now, as I plan the next ventures, exploring new innovations and expanding the empire we built from scratch, I wonder, what challenges will we face next, and how will we rise again? I invite you to reflect on your own journeys, share your thoughts, and think about the moments when persistence and cleverness can rewrite your story entirely.